They called me the mistake, now I own everything. They buried my father in white roses and polished gilt. Everyone wept exactly the way they were supposed to, measured sobs from mouths trained for theatrics. I stood at the edge of the grave, silent, the bastard daughter pretending the cold didn't reach her. They said he was a good man, a devoted husband, a model father. I almost laughed. Good men don't keep second families hidden like mold under marble. My name's Clara, the family secret. I grew up in the shadow of their perfection, a child born from my dad's affair with my mother who was once the housemaid. His wife forgave him publicly but punished us privately. He paid for our apartment, sent checks labeled tuition, and visited rarely, always in borrowed hours. I learned early that affection was a currency he spent sparingly. At funerals, truth buries itself deeper than the coffin. Marissa and Daniel, my half-siblings, his legitimate heirs, stood beside their mother, crying as if they'd known him past his business trips and photo ops. They de-inherited his eyes while I'd inherited his scandal. Growing up, they reminded me of it constantly, calling me the charity case, snickering when dad sent groceries instead of gifts. Still, I worshipped him. I wrote his name carefully on Father's Day cards I never mailed. Whenever he sneaked over, pressing cash into mom's palm, I clung to those minutes like proof that love might eventually outrun shame. It never did. He always left before sunset, rehearsing the same promise: I'll fix this one day. Now, as his widow wailed over the casket, I realized he'd kept that promise in reverse. Death fixed everything for him. No more secrets to juggle, no daughters left to disappoint. When the priest said family, every head bowed but mine. I couldn't mourn the man everyone else invented. I mourned the father I only had in fragments, the smell of his cologne fading each time he left our apartment, the sound of his footsteps never crossing our doorway again. Standing there, I vowed something quietly beneath the church bells. If they'd never see me as part of the family in life, they'd learn my name in death. My childhood was lived on a border, close enough to glimpse wealth but too far to touch it. Mom and I rented a tiny apartment that smelled of detergent and tired hope. She ironed rich people's clothes by day and our dignity by night. Her hands were always cracked, her smile knotted with secrets. Study hard, she'd whisper, so no one can call you what they call me. Across town, my half-siblings lived the filtered version of my life. Birthday parties in chandeliers, vacations that looked like commercials. I watched through social media windows, scrolling through their perfect faces on yachts while I helped mom choose which bills not to pay that month. Sometimes dad dropped by in his expensive car, honking softly as if guilt had headlights. He'd hand mom an envelope, never stepping fully inside. I wish things were different, he'd say, then kiss my forehead before disappearing back into legitimacy. I could smell his wife's perfume on his jacket as he hugged me goodbye. I'd inhale it anyway like borrowed air. The day mom collapsed at work, exhaustion finally cashed out her life. I remember the hospital beeping and the doctor's careful words that sounded detached, rehearsed. Dad came late, still in his tailored suit, face pale with something that wasn't grief. It was fear of being seen where he didn't belong. After the funeral, I stood outside his car, rain mixing with my tears. Please, I begged, don't make me go back to that apartment alone. He exhaled, rubbing his temples. It's complicated, Clara, they won't understand. I don't care if they understand, I'm your daughters. Maybe it was guilt, maybe convenience, but he finally nodded. Pack your things. His mansion looked like a museum, cold marble floors, chandeliers humming above endless hallways. The staff glanced at me with pity thinly disguised as courtesy. Marissa's stare could have cut glass. Daniel barely muttered hello. At dinner, conversation froze when I touched the silverware. Their mother, immaculate in pearls, turned to Dad with a brittle smile. How long will this arrangement last? As long as needed, he said quietly. His eyes flicked toward me, apology without backbone. I learned quickly how to disappear in plain sight. Speak only when spoken to. Pretend you can't hear laughter from the other side of closed doors. For years, survival meant shrinking smaller and smaller until one day I would finally fit the space they'd assigned me. The night everything cracked started like any other family performance. Crystal glasses, polite smiles, poison wrapped in silver napkins. We were celebrating the anniversary of Dad's company, which meant pretending our family portrait wasn't ripped in half. I kept quiet at the far end of the dining table, the seat reserved for decoration. Dad stood to make a toast, his glass trembling slightly. Tonight, he said, voice warm yet strained, I have an announcement. Everyone leaned forward, expecting talk of profits, never confessions. I've decided to add Clara to the family registry. She deserves the name she was born with. The room erupted before the echo faded. Marissa's silverware clattered to the floor. Daniel's jaw locked. Their mother went pale, then scarlet. You can't be serious, she spat. You think parading your mistake in legal ink will fix your sins. She's my daughter, he said softly. No, Marissa snapped, eyes burning into mine. She's the maid's bastard. I stood, chair scraping loud against the floor. Don't talk about my mother. She got what she wanted, money, Daniel muttered. You got the leftovers, congratulations. Every word landed like glass shards in my chest. I wanted Dad to say something, anything, but he just stared at his wine. Enough, he whispered weakly. Their mother turned that brittle rage toward him. You'll ruin our legacy, she hissed. Your guilt doesn't entitle her to what's ours. They stormed out in a cloud of perfume and fury. The party disintegrated. Servants cleaned in silence while I fled upstairs. Behind the closed door, I caught my reflection in the mirror, his eyes in my face, his mistake staring back. Later that night, I found him in the study. The room smelled like brandy and despair. He was slumped in his chair, tie loosened, mumbling at the air. I'm tired of fighting, Clara, he said without looking at me. I just wanted peace. You could have had it, I whispered, if you'd chosen honesty. His eyes met mine, sadder than I'd ever seen. I tried. I just just never knew which life to end to save the other. After that, everything blurred. He died 3 days later, heart attack, the doctor said. The headline in the paper praised his empire. No one mentioned the war inside his house. At the funeral, people whispered that stress killed him, that my arrival lit the fuse. His widow comforted my siblings while side-eyeing the corpse of her husband's double life. Marissa cornered me outside the church gates. You finally got what you wanted, she said coldly. You killed him. Then she walked away, heels clicking like hammer blows on concrete. I stood frozen while rain blurred his name on the coffin lid. The guilt stuck, heavy and permanent. I didn't cry until night fell, when I realized death hadn't ended being unwanted. It had just changed its shape. By dawn, I packed a small bag, stole one last look at the mansion, and left quietly. No one stopped me. No one ever did. The morning after the funeral, I returned only to collect what was mine, which, according to them, was nothing. Marissa met me at the gates, manicured hands clutching a manila envelope. Father's will has been read, she said, lips curling. You're not mentioned. She tossed the envelope at my feet. Inside was my birth certificate and a check barely enough to survive a month. I earned more love cleaning your messes than you ever did by being his miracle, I said, but my voice broke halfway through. She smirked. Don't flatter yourself, Clara. Charity has an expiration date. Security appeared before the front doors. Daniel stood behind them looking guilty, maybe for 5 seconds, then looked away. They handed me a black garbage bag stuffed with the few clothes I'd brought. And just like that, I was erased, kicked down the marble steps of a family tree that never wanted my branch. The city swallowed me whole. I rented a single room above a noisy bar, paid in cash, and learned the taste of spilled beer and loneliness. By night, I scrubbed sticky tables until dawn. By morning, I filled out scholarship applications in shaky penmanship. Each rejection felt like confirmation of the name they gave me. Mistake. Bills multiplied faster than income. Once, hungry and too proud to beg, I tore an Apple sticker in half just to pretend I'd eaten something. Then one evening, a woman with kind eyes sat at the bar until closing. You're too intelligent for this place, she said after watching me balance receipts. She introduced herself as Mrs. Anders, a retired lawyer who came for the music, not the drinks. I laughed bitterly. Intelligence doesn't feed rent. She studied me for a long moment. Maybe not, but it can change who pays it. Her words lodged somewhere deep. She became a regular, leaving behind used paperbacks and advice I didn't ask for. One night she caught me sketching business models on napkins. You think like a strategist, she said. Ever thought about law or finance? I can't afford thought, I replied. She smiled. Good thing scholarships still exist. I'll help you find one. True to her promise, she guided me through forms, essays, interviews. When the acceptance letter came months later, with full ride stamped across the top, I cried so hard I forgot my bitterness for a moment. Standing outside the dormitory that first day, clutching my single suitcase, I whispered, they took everything. Then I straightened my back, but they didn't take me. The mansion had marble floors. My dorm room had peeling paint. Still, for the first time, every inch of space belonged entirely to me. Years smoothed my rough edges, but never erased them. College was survival with caffeine and grit. I worked nights at a cafe, mornings in class, weekends shadowing anyone who'd teach me business math for the price of curiosity. Mrs. Anders checked in often, her letters filled with blunt motivation. Use their hatred as your scholarship. Use pain as capital. I did. 4 years later, I graduated top of my class, shaking hands with professionals who saw potential instead of scandal. The maid's daughter became Clara Hayes. The consultant firms fought over. I took a job fixing failing companies, spending endless nights beneath fluorescent lights, lacing my heartache into spreadsheets. Success, I learned, is loud only until it feels normal. By 26, I was known for being ruthless in the boardroom and invisible outside it. Then, irony found me. Over headlines and quarterly reports, I discovered my late father's company, once a symbol of perfection, was drowning in debt. A string of mismanaged expansions under Marissa's and Daniel's leadership had nearly bankrupted it. I should have looked away, but revenge has a beautiful kind of gravity. I leaned in. Through Mrs. Anders's contacts, I partnered with an investment firm and quietly began acquiring shares through subsidiaries. Piece by piece, I built control the way they once dismantled me. The day the final documents cleared, I stared at the signature line and laughed. The ink of my name swallowed theirs. The board meeting that announced the new majority shareholder was set for Monday. I wore a tailored black suit, simple pearl earrings, my mother's, and walked into the glass tower that had once barred me entry. Executives straightened when they saw me, confusion flickering before recognition settled like panic. Marissa sat at the head of the table until I reached for the chair she thought was hers. This seat's taken, she said sharply. I smiled, yes, by me. The room fell still as I laid the acquisition papers down. A director cleared his throat. You're Clara Hayes. In full ownership, I replied, effective immediately. Daniel blinked, face draining of color. You can't be serious. Who approved this? Your math did, I said, sliding a report toward him showing years of losses. I simply purchased what you mismanaged. Finally, Marissa found her voice. So what, you come crawling back to gloat? No, I said softly, savoring the truth. I walked back to claim what should have never excluded me. The silence thickened. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Then, just loud enough for every recording phone to catch, I added, remember the mistake, she signs your paychecks now. Gasps rippled like applause. For the first time, I didn't feel like the servant's child slipping through hallways. I felt whole, terrifyingly whole. Yet under the triumph, something trembled, small and painful. I looked at their faces, ashamed, furious, curved mirrors of who I used to be, and wondered if victory without love was just another kind of exile. Still, Still, as flashes from reporters caught my smile, I reminded myself, every empire begins somewhere uninvited. Mine started in a broom closet. Running the company I once scrubbed floors for should have felt euphoric. At first, it did, the quiet vengeance of signing checks, hearing my name echoed down marble hallways that once silenced me. But power, I discovered, tastes metallic, thrilling for one swallow, then bitter. I spent my first months performing precision surgery on Dad's crumbling empire. Every shady executive loyal to Marissa's mother was scrutinized. Files disappeared into legal hands, whispers turned to firings. I rewrote policies, resurrected failing divisions, and rebuilt what they tried to bury me under. Numbers rose, profits returned. Headlines hailed the mystery CEO's genius turnaround. Behind closed doors came the panic. Marissa and Daniel kept offices only in name, stripped of authority, but still haunting the building like ghosts furious about eviction. They sent lawyers, accusations, even tear-stained voicemails. I responded with silence. Silence is louder than shouting when you own the floor beneath their feet. The day Marissa finally stormed into my office, it was raining hard, thunder cracking behind her words. "You think taking over fixes anything?" she snapped. "You stole my inheritance." I leaned back, calm enough to infuriate her further. "You mean the inheritance you already spent keeping this place afloat?" "Liars." Without speaking, I opened a folder, sliding it across the desk. The proof of expense accounts, hidden transfers, and private trips billed to the company. "Your mother siphoned company money for years. Auditors found everything," I said. "You can read it while security escorts you out." Her face drained. "You'd really throw your own sister out in the rain." "Half-sister," I corrected gently, "and rain's nothing new for me." She lunged for the folder and knocked over my water glass instead. I didn't flinch. Gestures don't kill truth. When the guards arrived, I nodded toward the door. As she screamed threats down the hall, I remembered myself at 17, clutching a garbage bag of clothes while she smirked from the steps. History doesn't always repeat. It sometimes rhymes inverted. That should have satisfied me. It didn't. Night after night, I caught myself staring at Dad's portrait in the boardroom, searching for the man behind the myth. I'd built an empire out of their cruelty, yet still wanted his approval, the one thing death had stolen. Daniel approached me weeks later, head bowed, asking for mercy. I wasn't sure I still understood. "I was wrong," he admitted quietly. "I treated you how I was taught to." I listened, then offered him a demotion instead of exile. Not because I forgave him, but because I was tired of vengeance echoing louder than progress. By year's end, profits surged, journalists praised, employees respected. I'd won every battle but felt hollow in victory. Standing alone in the mansion I'd repurchased out of spite, the silence pressed harder than applause. Vengeance, I realized, doesn't heal abandonment, it just builds prettier cages. Success looks a lot like survival when you view it from above. Both require never stopping. That night I stood by the same window Dad once stared from, whispering to the storm, "I made it just like you wanted." Then, barely audible, "But it still doesn't feel like home." The lightning outside flickered against the glass, and for a fleeting second our reflections overlap, his ghost, my face, both of us prisoners of choices we couldn't undo. It arrived folded inside an old file box. Mrs. Anders had been sorting through one of the last archives from the company's early days. "Thought you'd want this, dear," she said, handing me the yellowed envelope. My father's handwriting bled through the paper in familiar slanted loops. My pulse quickened. I sat alone in the office, blinds half drawn, and broke the seal. Inside were a few pages and a photograph of Mom holding a baby, me standing in the mansion's side garden. He must have taken it himself long ago, before shame taught him angles of secrecy. The letter started simply, "Clara, if you're reading this, it means I've failed at saying these words aloud." I read the first paragraph 3 times before I could move on. He wrote about guilt, about fear carving him into halves. "I built walls to protect everyone from scandal," he confessed. "But in doing so, I only trapped the people I loved most. I've watched you from the distance, cowardice builds. You deserved more than envelopes and excuses." I turned the page, the ink blurred where a drop of something, maybe wine, maybe tears, had smudged his script. "There's a trust fund I created in your name. It will awaken when you reach 25. It's not charity, it's reparations. Use it for freedom, not forgiveness." My breath caught. 25. I was 25 when I bought the company. I skimmed faster. "You'll think your success was self-made, and in many ways it is. But know this, I ensured your start quietly, hoping one day you'd rewrite our story into something cleaner than the one I gave you." Near the bottom, smaller handwriting trembled across the page. "I always loved you, but I loved my image more. You were never my mistake. I was yours." The world narrowed to the sound of paper shaking in my hands. Years of anger cracked open, spilling confusion and grief where rage had lived comfortably. He de-orchestrated my revenge without knowing it, set the dominoes so that the girl kept in shadow would one day own the house that cast it. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried, not like the wounded daughter of a coward, but like someone finally seen. In those inked apologies, I found the truth I'd been chasing across boardrooms and battlefields. He couldn't make peace while alive, so he'd left it for me to finish. I didn't plan to see them again, but life seems to enjoy symmetry. News of the company's recovery spread fast, and before long my receptionist buzzed in, "Marissa and Daniel are here. They say it's important." I asked her to send them up. When the elevator opened, they looked nothing like royalty, suits wrinkled, pride cracked. For once, Marissa didn't lead with venom. "Clara," she said softly, "we need work. The press won't touch us, and you're the only one who'll even meet us." I gestured to the seats across from my desk. They hesitated a moment, knowing the irony. Marissa sat, clutching her handbag like a lifeline. Daniel couldn't meet my eyes. "We know what we said before," he started. "Mom filled our heads with poison. poison. We believed her because it was easier than believing you shared our blood. I studied them quietly. Time had done what justice couldn't, humbled them. You treated me like a stain, I said. Now you ask for mercy. We deserve none, Marissa replied quickly. But we're asking anyway. She looked smaller, not the villain I'd painted for years, just another person broken by upbringing. I could have said no, part of me wanted to, but Dad's letter still sat in my desk drawer, its last line pulsing like a heartbeat. You were never my mistake. Holding onto hate suddenly seemed like betraying the closure he'd begged me to find. So I folded my hands and said, there are positions open. Entry level, you'll earn your place or you'll leave. No special treatment. They stared at me surprised. You do that after everything? Daniel asked. I nodded because I know too well what it feels like to be unwanted. Silence stretched between us, heavy but not hostile. Eventually, Marissa whispered, I'm sorry, Clara. Her voice cracked mid-sentence as if she'd never practiced that word before. I believed it. Later that evening, the three of us stood outside the building as city lights flickered on. We didn't hug, we didn't smile. We simply stood there the way survivors of a wreck sometimes circle the debris together, not yet ready to walk away. Maybe this is where we begin, Daniel said quietly. Maybe, I answered. My reflection in the glass showed three siblings side by side, their edges still jagged but finally pointing in the same direction. Not healed, just human, and that was enough. Years have rinsed the bitterness from my voice without washing away its memory. I'm 32 now, standing at the top floor of the headquarters, watching the city pulse below like circuitry. The skyline looks sharper at this height, all light and hum, proof that survival can be built tall enough to touch the clouds. People call me the youngest CEO the company's ever had, but statistics are what keep me staring out these windows. It's the reflection staring back, steady eyes that no longer flinch at ghosts. The building bears my last name now, Hayes Industries. I added my mother's crest beside it, a tiny emblem of a stitched heart, our private joke that all beautiful things are patched together. Under the brand's new mission statement, we fund scholarships for underprivileged students, housekeepers, children, the ones who grow up knowing ceilings better than skies. Every press release ends with 5 words, in memory of Margaret Hayes. Mom would have smiled at that. She would have teased me for getting sentimental, then wiped tears with the back of her hand when she thought I wasn't looking. Daniel manages logistics now, reliable and quiet. Marissa runs a youth training program through our foundation, her sharpness redirected toward purpose. We meet often not to relive but to maintain. It's strange how forgiveness, once unthinkable, can become routine. Sometimes I still dream about my father's study, the half-drawn curtains, his tired apology. In those dreams, he's alive long enough to see what I built. He doesn't speak, he just nods, a proud hush filling the space between us. I wake up before the moment collapses, and that's all right. Some reconciliations exist only in imagination. In the evenings when staff have gone home, I walk the halls alone, marble cool beneath my heels. The echoes don't scare me anymore. They remind me who I was, the girl with the garbage bag, the invisible one at the edge of family dinners. She's still here, whispering sometimes, remember where we started. I whisper back, I do. They built empires to hide their shame. I built mine to honor the ashes they left. Owning everything doesn't mean possessing things. It means owning my story, every scar, every loss that raised me. Let them keep their gilded names and their pedigrees. I have something rarer, a legacy written in survival, stitched with both mercy and fire.